Okay. I, Janice Savage Martin, President of the Duncanville ISD Board of Trustees, call this meeting of the Duncanville Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of Board of Trustees is present, that the meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening. Our mission at Duncanville ISD is to engage, equip, and empower all scholars to achieve their unique potential. We will now go to closed session. Okay, we are back from closed session. We will continue with our agenda items. We'll move to opening ceremonies. The invocation will be given by Janet Veracruz.
Good evening, everyone. If you would join me in a word of prayer, bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, we gather together and come into agreement in the wonderful and powerful name of Jesus. Where two or more are gathered, there you will be in the midst of us, and anything we agree upon as touching you will surely do. We seek your guidance and protection as we navigate this meeting and decisions being made tonight for the better of our school leaders, educators, students, and superintendent. Lord, we pray that everything would be executed with excellence and done unto you. Help everyone to filter, focus on the things you know they need to change and improve. Lord, we look to you as our source and provider. Lord, empower each person to stay unified in purpose of thought and heart. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Trustee Phil McNeely will lead us in the pledges. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. We'll move now to the superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Smith.
All right, thank you, Madam President. Good evening to the staff and those who are in attendance. Again, good evening, board members. I have the following items that I would like to report this evening. The first item is just to share with you all some information from our new teacher orientation that we had on last week. It was a great evening. We had our two new teachers of the year, Mrs. Jessica Ford and Ms. Heike Johnson. They were able to present and welcome our new teachers. Had about 140 or so new teachers, combination of those that are new to the profession and also those that are coming to us from other school districts. And so this was a 3-day event hosted primarily at Duncanville High School, and the staff and all those who were involved did an outstanding job. So much so that we got a lot of attention from the media, and we got a call from Channel 8, and we wanted to share with you the results of that. And there's a video that we have ready to show you from the Channel 8 story. So if you could go ahead and cue the video.
The last 2 school years have been rough for teachers, to say the least, of course, and students as well, of course, with classes starting back up in really just a few weeks now. Teachers in Duncanville are already preparing. Here's Damond Fernandez with some of the adjustments they're making.
I have been challenged to grow as an educator.
It's a pretty big week in Duncanville ISD. This district is gathering its newest teachers for orientation and training.
This is such a pivotal time in education,
as they prepare to usher in a new school year.
This was an opportunity for us to welcome new hires into the district, get them acclimated into our vision and our plan to start the new school year.
Dr. Mark Smith is superintendent of Duncanville ISD. He says this week's staff is focused on preparation and planning knowing the past 15 months of the pandemic have been a challenge for faculty, students, and families.
What we are focused on, of course, is wanting to make sure that our parents and our teachers, everyone feels comfortable coming back into the school year as it relates to their safety.
This school district is among one of the earliest heading back to class in North Texas. School in Duncanville ISD begins August 1st.
Welcome to the virtual classroom.
It'll be an adjustment considering students are returning from virtual learning back to in-person instruction.
Our focus is to get them caught up, to focus on growth, identifying where they are when they come into our schools, and then trying to rebuild their focus from a learning standpoint so that we can begin the work of getting them caught back up.
Among other issues administrators and teachers are addressing is monitoring enrollment. Smith says the numbers are not quite where they need to be.
The biggest challenge for us is we need to get our students back in school.
Dr. Smith says this week is about being proactive in planning for a smooth and safe transition back to school.
We're all walking towards that one mission, and that's to write success stories.
In Duncanville, I'm Damon Fernandez.
Thank you. We did report back to the news reporter there because they got the date wrong. You may have seen August 1st. Of course, our first day of school is August 2nd. So we did report back, and they assured us that they're going to correct that. So it was a great event. We're really excited about the new teachers that are going to be joining us. The next item that I had is, we're always excited about convocation. It's an opportunity for us to kick off the new school year, to talk about our vision and our goals and the challenges, but embracing those challenges as we begin the school year. So next, we're going to have 3 sessions that's going to take place on next week on the 28th. We'll have an 8 a.m. session, 10:30 session, and a 1 p.m. session. At the 8 a.m. session, Region 10 is going to be here, and they're going to be recognizing the board for the Board of the Year, and so we are really excited about that. Joining me in each of the 3 sessions will be several staff members, whether it be new teachers of the year or just members from certain areas that maybe we don't always see very often, for example, like in the operations department. So they're going to be joining me on stage, and we're going to have just a really great time. Mr. Robert Jackson, who was a guest speaker several years ago, he's got some segments in convocation that we're excited to have him join us. And so we're going to have a great time getting our school year started. So really excited about that. The last item that I had is just to highlight and compliment this school board. The work you do is, people think it's just showing up once a month. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you do. And, it's when I sit back and think about the journey, it's been an awesome journey, and you are so deserving of this recognition and this honor. I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. And just want you to know that, this is a feat that was not easy to obtain. There are 130 school districts in Region 10 and covers about 8 counties. And the work that goes into telling a board story, it's one thing that the board has done the work, but then to tell that story, Dr. Allocation and other team members that participated in that, it's a very tedious task. And so I'm really proud of you all. I'm proud to serve with you all, and I'm so glad that others in the region and the state know about Duncanville ISD Board. So I'm looking forward to the next steps in the journey. We hope that we're able to make the top 5, and then if we do, the conference happens to be in Dallas this year, so it'll be a short drive to get on the stage if that is something that we are afforded an opportunity to do. But it's an honor to work with you, and it's an honor to be a part of the team. And again, no board deserves this as much as you do. It's been an awesome journey. So wanted to congratulate you on being the Region 10 School Board of the Year. So. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And we are very honored to have received that honor for sure. We'll now move to the ESSER 3 funds public hearing. I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Ed Bigby.
Well, first, let me congratulate you. I've worked with a lot of school boards, and you're deserving.
Thank
You're
you.
more than deserving of that honor. So,
Just as a reminder, Dr. Bigby, before you get started, board members, we provided
yes.
you the packet, so you have an attachment there in front of you to follow along. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Bigby.
okay. Next slide, please. Just a reminder to you what ESSER, we keep saying that like it's a dirty word, but it's the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Fund that the federal government passed in many sections. It's boiled down to now we're dealing with three different sections of it, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. It's handled through TEA. It's a federal grant, but TEA handles it, which actually makes it a whole lot easier than trying to deal directly with the federal government. I know we don't usually say it's easy to deal with TEA, but it's much easier. We did one piece of this with the federal government, and I was ready to quit. So it was nice that TEA picked it up. Okay, next slide. The intent of the grants are basically to either catch our kids up or prevent another pandemic from taking place. They've allowed us to use the funding for different ways. What we're bringing to you tonight focuses more on catching our kids up. We spent an entire year and a half learning how to clean the building and protect everyone, so we wanted to concentrate most of it on the intellectual help and the social well-being of our students. They certainly address the academic needs, but there's a big piece of that social and emotional piece that's got to be addressed from kids going through what they've gone through. And we think about how traumatic it is for us, and you can imagine what that's doing to a kindergartner. So that's very important in what we do now. Okay, next slide. As I said, there's been three pieces of this. ESSER 1 is passed. They skipped ESSER 2, went straight to ESSER 3. It was put together really to catch kids up. We'll explain a little more how they've divided that up, but they now have opened up ESSER 2, so we'll be putting that together along with a plan to reopen schools. We're basically working off the plan we had a year ago because we had to reopen schools then. There was some tweaking to that, but ESSER 2 will be coming back to you later. We're just doing the ESSER 3 part right now. Okay, next slide. ESSER 1 was the first CARES Act. It shows we received $4.3 million. Little misnomer there because it was all supplanting. We picked up very little extra money because of that, but it looks good on paper. ESSER 2 is a little over $11 million, and that looks good on paper, but they're going to take the amount of money that they put into the hold harmless last year to keep us from losing funding, and they're going to deduct that from ESSER 2. And we're not really sure. I've got a workshop later in the week to try to go through the math to see how much that we're going to lose, but it could be a substantial amount. And ESSER 3 is a $24.9 million. We'll talk about later how that's divided. We're only working with 2/3 of that right now. I'm reading the small print. It actually can date back to March 13th of 2020. We haven't applied for the grant to cover any of those costs because those costs have been covered. We felt like it was much more important to move forward and work all the funds toward catching our kids up. Okay, next slide. And procuring the funding, we have to make sure that we've engaged shareholders and given the public an opportunity. That's one reason for this meeting tonight, is if any of the public would like to comment on the ESSER plan. We'll also have other ways to gather that input. The plan that was put together that we're moving forward with right now was done with quite a bit of collaboration between central office staff and campus staff. But one of the requirements is to make sure that we solicit all the input we can from parents or any other groups that are within our district. Okay, next slide. Not going to read all the small print to you. We've talked about this a few times of how we can use the funds. And it's basically pretty open, particularly for a federal grant, where we can use them. All we have to do is make sure that we can tie what we want to use them for back to the grant somehow and be able to justify how that represents either catching kids up or helping the environment of the school or the safety or for our staff and for students. So you can see that that list hasn't changed since we brought it to you a couple of times ago. There's one stipulation in ESSER 3 that at least 20% of the grant has to be spent toward addressing learning loss. And you'll see as we go through this, we've dedicated a tremendous amount more than that toward learning loss. So all the grant required was 20%, which that first 16 million was only 3.2 million. And we've allocated much more than that for learning loss. Okay, next slide, please. As I said, there's two disbursements. Part of this was because TEA's plan wasn't totally approved by the federal government. They approved the first section, which gave us 2/3 of it. And as of last week, the federal government had approved the second piece of it, but they're not yet accepting amendments to the first grant that we haven't been awarded yet. So as soon as they do, then we'll put the rest of the plan together and bring that back through you. We've filed the grant. We had to have it filed by next Tuesday, so we filed it. It's amendable. We can change it any way that we need to, but we had to have it in if we wanted the $16 million before next Tuesday, and we wanted to make sure we got it in early enough if we had to do any corrections to it. And so far it's passed everything with TEA and it's moving on. So the 16.6 is what is in our initial application for the grant. We're waiting on them to send back what we call a NOGA. It's the Notice of Grant Award. It comes with any grant, but once they send it back to you and once you've been approved, then you can start spending the funds. We won't have the funds. You have to spend the funds and then they reimburse you for it. But once you have the NOGA in hand, then you'll get the funding, which would be nice. You know, it's not that checks in the mail kind of thing. As soon as we get the go ahead with TEA, we'll work on filing it. We have a good while to get the second phase of it filed for. They haven't even set a date when it has to be turned in. Okay, next slide. Now the fun part, and I'm going to move and let Dr. Alachka talk to you about the strategic plan and how this all ties together. I'm way beyond the numbers thing.
Good evening and congratulations, Board. Well, as you know, throughout the spring, the district worked collaboratively with our stakeholders to create our long-range strategic plan. The strategic plan, it identified the initiatives of the district based on the goals and priorities that were set by the Board. The strategic plan serves as the district's master plan for all other plans, including the ESSER plan. Therefore, the ESSER plan initiatives were derived from the strategic plan while maintaining alignment with state and federal requirements. Next slide. Our team worked collaboratively to ensure the ESSER plan initiatives targeted each of the 5 priorities in the strategic plan. Strategic priority 1 is where the learning acceleration and mitigation of learning loss aligns. Safe and healthy school communities will support strategic priority 2. Maintenance and capital improvements aligned to strategic priorities 4 and 5, and recruitment and retention aligned to the strategic priority 3. In addition to aligning with the broader strategic priorities and goals, the ESSER plan will also help us to initiate the work on several of the long-range action plans or action steps that were developed by our stakeholder strategic planning teams, which many of you served on. Strategic plan alignment was a key focus, of course, in the development of our overall ESSER plan. Are there any questions related to our ESSER planning process? Okay, with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Bigby.
Next slide, please. You can see what we put in the plan, how it fits into those 4 areas, the learning acceleration, and if you really want to get deeper into any of these, I'll sit back down. But I'll walk you through this, and you can, certainly if you have questions on those, feel free to ask those. Literacy and mathematic resources for learning and assessment, professional learning for teachers, there's quite a bit dedicated to professional development and to the MAP assessments. Capital improvements, we were allowed to do anything that helped with air quality, so we put some funds in there to replace the oldest HVAC systems in our district, which will greatly improve the air quality in those schools. Technology infrastructure and hardware, this helps us begin to move toward one-to-one. It doesn't get us there, but until the infrastructure is in place, it won't help us to get there anyway. So that's part of what's in this. Safety and health, social and emotional learning supports, restorative practices, crisis response and calming areas for students, training and development for teachers and leaders, and that's both regular education and special education teachers. There's quite a bit of cross-training in there. Recruitment and retention, these things we talked about at budget time. Stipends to support and teachers, the higher stipends, the hiring schedule changes that you allowed us to make, and then the one-time payment for employees that's coming in November is included in the grant rather than coming out of fund balance. Okay, next slide. This is how the finance breaks down of that. And once again, this is a work in progress. We have to turn the grant in, but we can amend it if some of this needs to shift somewhere down the road. Recruitment and retention, if you remember, $5 million of that is the one-time payment. So that's what makes that number so inflated. Learning acceleration, $5.6 million. Safety and health, there's a small amount. Once again, we've already invested a tremendous amount of money in that. And capital improvements, this includes the HVAC and the technology infrastructure. So you can see that breaks down and totals to the $16.6 million. Okay, next slide. Once again, the grant requires that we get public input. We also have to, as soon as the NOGA is received, the Notice of Grant Award, we have to post our plan on the website, as well as our reopening plan has to be posted. And it's my understanding we're setting that website up now where if they come to look at those, there'll be an opportunity for them to input onto the website so we can see what kind of input we're getting from the public. We're also reaching out to groups, representative groups within the district to try to get as much input as we can. Sometimes it's hard to get a lot of input from people, but we're going to try to solicit all that we can. And once again, the plan is flexible enough to change it if we really need to. Okay, next slide. And this is, I don't know that we have any public here, but this would be the time for their input or anything that you folks need to let us know about or questions that you have. We'll all certainly be happy to try to answer those.
Do we have any comments or questions regarding the hearing? We do not have any public comments, so the hearing has ended. We will now move to the communication from citizens to discuss pending agenda items before the board. We do not have any communications from the citizens regarding a pending agenda item. We will now move to take action on items discussed in closed session, and we have none. Move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Madam President, I move that we move 8A and 8B to the consent agenda.
Thank you. The motion was made to move items in the action agenda items up to the consent agenda items. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Phil, seconded by Carla Fahey. Is any further questions, comments, or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries 6-0. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended? Motion has been made by Jackie and seconded by Phil. Seconded the consent agenda be approved as amended. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion on any of the items? Jackie, you had one. Yes, Jackie.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the band trip. It mentioned in the documents that the instruments were not included, within the charges listed. And so I was just trying to figure out how we were handling that.
Thank you. Congratulations again, board. Great job. And thank you for that question. You're referring to the travel, and in that travel, you're referring to, I just want to make sure I'm clear, the instrument fees not being included. Is that correct?
The transportation.
Transportation, okay. So this particular trip for students going to Orlando is a leadership retreat. So instruments will not be required.
Okay.
So yes, so this is
you answered
yes.
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, that was it.
That was it.
Makes perfect sense. We do, okay, let's go ahead and vote. Any other further comments? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And no opposed, motion carries 6-0. We want to tell the band that we're very proud of you, and as always, you're a great representation of the City of Champion. So we thank you very much for planning on this trip. Okay, sorry, we'll now move. Okay, we have no action items now. Okay, we're going to the first information discussion agenda, item A, energy contract resolution. Am I right?
No.
Sorry? Sorry. You're right. Education, leadership, development, and partnership. Thank you for coming up. Told me I was wrong.
Good evening, Madam President, Board, Dr. Smith. Again, Board, congratulations. I am here to share an information item with you on a potential partnership between Duncanville Independent School District and the University of North Texas at Dallas for an educational leadership development program. Next slide, please. So there are several benefits to this program, and I'll talk a little bit about why UNT Dallas. But the benefits include a sustainable leadership pipeline, building our own pipeline so that we have leaders that are ready and poised in our district. We already have some sort of pipeline in that we have the ILA. However, this program, one of the other benefits is that they can actually receive a master's degree. So a master's degree in educational leadership. This would have a positive impact on our recruitment and retention. And also it's done through a cohort model, so that cohort model would help to build that supportive leadership network so that as they matriculate through the program, they also have a group of colleagues that are going through that with them. And they'll be poised and ready to receive jobs in our district, but also to go beyond us. But we want to keep them here, and we'll talk about why that this partnership will be important for that. Next slide. So why UNT Dallas? First is the proven curriculum. So the master's program is 10 courses, about 30 semester hours, and that looks like about 18 months. And so once they go through that program, graduates will be able to sit for the exam, the principal exam. And so right now, the principal test has changed. And so even with the changes to the test, they have a 95% success rate on the new exam, on the new certification exam. Also, the student-centered approach. And so this would mean for us that classes could be offered in Duncanville ISD right in our facilities or at UNT Dallas campus, which is very close to us in proximity.
So good.
They will work specifically with Duncanville leadership to ensure that our program matches our needs. And so I'll talk about the tenets of their program, but this would be specific to our district. So for example, if we're using a particular book with all of our leaders, they will embed that into the work that they do with our Duncanville cohort. They offer flexible scheduling, so that could be face-to-face classes and also a hybrid approach for us. And right now, the districts that they have partnered with, they have about a 90% program completion rate. So also the affordability of this program, being that UNT Dallas is one of the most cost-effective programs around, and it's approximately $10,000 for that master's degree. And so the district could pay, it says cover a minimum of 50%. Well, I'll talk about that in the next slide, but that's just the recommendation from them. Doesn't mean that we have to do that 50%. Next slide. And so this is just the core principles of that educational leadership program at UNT Dallas. It addresses urban leadership, urban education, instructional leadership. So gone are the days of just being a building manager. We want to be sure that the people that are working as leaders in our district are poised with the instructional capacity to be able to help teachers to grow. And then multicultural schools. Again, this is a focus of the program, but they would take exactly what we're doing in our district and try to use that to enhance their program so that it's just not their regular program that everybody else gets. It would be tailored to us. Next slide. Thank you. So I talked about 10 courses, and those courses are just listed there for you, and those are the courses that they also need in order to sit for the exam. Next slide, please. So a couple of things that we need to consider. So as we consider this potential partnership, the first is the timeline. And the cohorts are set up in different ways depending on the district. So for us, we've talked about whether or not a fall or spring timeline would work best. And so one of the recommendations, even from UNT Dallas, was a spring timeline, because that gives us time each year to be sure that we have the best of the best candidates for the program. Also, consideration number 2 is the MOU between the district and also the students that we have that will be attending UNT Dallas. And so that's important because we want them to commit. I talked about we'll have them ready, they'll have a certification, but we want them to stay here. So part of that is the commitment. We commit and invest in one another. And so one of the ways of doing that is holding them to a commitment of possibly 2 years after the program. So what that gives us is a 4-year commitment, because we talked about 18 months for the program. So that's similar to what neighboring districts that have partnered with them are doing as well. Consideration number 3 is just about the cost to the actual participant. And so I referenced the 50% earlier. Again, that's not something that has to be done, but districts are paying a portion of that. And so that's whatever that looks like for our district. Some districts are doing more, but 50% is the number that was given by UNT Dallas as what they recommend, at least 50%. Program evaluation. So that would be the responsibility of us as Duncanville ISD leaders to make sure that this program is working for us and that it's being effective. So the idea of the cohort model is that we could start another cohort. If we say in the spring, we would start the next cohort the following spring. And so we would have to decide whether or not this program is working for us before we started another cohort. Of course, we would not do that without engaging in whether or not that's working for us. Student progress will also be tracked through the program. That goes back to the MOU of knowing whether or not students are making progress and whatever we put in the MOU as it relates to the grades that they have to have and that sort of thing. So we get to determine that as well. Next slide, please. And last thing you see here is just kind of a brief, if we went with a spring timeline, this just gives you a layout of where we would start. You'll see that some promotion items would need to start in August, and they would actually do a lot of that. UNC Dallas would do a lot of that for us. Same thing in September, starting with informational items so that candidates that are interested, that have applied, we can start having conversations with them about what that will actually look like. In October, they would start the interview process. And so districts do this different ways, but what we've discussed is having a round 2, so you get into the program because they have to be admitted into UNT Dallas, but also we get to self-select, so we get to look at the candidates as well to be sure that we have the right people in that cohort, since we will be making an investment in them as well. And then in November, have the orientation, and last in the spring, actually launch in January. Next slide. And that is all that I have. I will take any questions that you may have at this time.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to comment that the spring start, I think is so teacher friendly, because teachers trying to get a start on the school year and all the changing classrooms and everything that comes with starting up a school year. I think it's very teacher sensitive to do a spring start line. So I thought that was very sensitive.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Goodman.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the information, sorry. Did you have a question? Sorry, one more.
No, I was just going to make a comment. I think, we have to commend you all. I think it's a wonderful program and a great idea to help, the teachers who are here to advance. So I think it's a great investment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Goodman. We will now move to the information discussion, agenda item B, summer school updates. The presenter is Erica Reyes.
Good evening, Madam President, Board, Dr. Smith. Again, I would like to extend my congratulations to the Board. I'm here tonight to give an overview of the summer school updates, our summer support programs. Next slide, please. We'll begin with our core academic pre-K and kindergarten program that was held at Hyman Elementary. And we had 83% overall attendance. And overall, 49% of our students increased in reading and 63% of our students increased in math. And that is using the iSIP, which is the iStation. And also some of our highlights from that program is all pre-K teachers had over 50% growth in their math, and also eight of our 9 kindergarten teachers had 50% growth in math. Next slide, please. We move on to our 1st through 4th grade core program, which was at Bill Hart's Elementary. And if you look there, their data is all the way from 1st grade all the way to 4th. I'm not going to read every bullet to you, but I will give you an overview. They had 79% overall attendance, and all grade levels increased 3 to 7% in reading. And grades 1st and 2nd had a 1 to 3% increase in math. And then 3rd and 4th grade showed a slight decrease. However, some of our highlights, 67% of our students that were required to attend summer school were promoted. Next slide, please. Next, we move on to secondary. At Kennemer Middle School, we did have our SSP, which is our summer support program, and then we also had failure recoup. So they had 2 programs occurring there. We had, for our attendance, as you can see there, we had 80% overall attendance, and this was grades 5th through 8th. If you look at our data, 38 out of the 53 students completed failure recoup. All grade levels made progress in reading. And if you look at 7th grade, there was a 42-point gain in reading. And again, they used iStation there as well. Again, minimal progress was made in math for iSIP, which is iStation. And out of our required students, 240 out of 390 students were promoted. And some of the highlights from this program were 71% of our students completed the failure recoup, and 62% of our students that were required to attend summer school were promoted as well. Next slide, please. And then we move on to DHS, and at DHS we also had our EOC, and then we also had credit recovery. And if you look on our attendance for Duncanville High School, we had 78% overall attendance. And then if you look at EOC, you have all the subjects listed there as well. I'm not going to read all of those to you either, but you can see that quite a few students completed their subject areas, and then credit recovery as well. We had many that completed, and a great highlight there at DHS was 29 seniors graduated out of 37, which is amazing. They did a really good job of communicating, recruiting, and being flexible with those students to try to help them get their credits to graduate. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we had PACE. And if you see, 82% of the students enrolled actively participated in the program. 3 more students became eligible for graduation. 11 completed all courses for which they were registered, and they could be registered up to 4 courses. And then 39 half credits were earned. So on July 1st, PACE graduated 14 students. Next slide, please. And then we have our ESY. And we had an elementary and a secondary ESY, and they had academic gains in the elementary. And this was, remember, we're getting them back to getting used to being in person, so this was a great way to start that. Several students were able to receive mastery on their IEP goals, and then they had opportunities to foster those relationships with parents as a staff as well. Our secondary used Teach Town program to help implement their IEPs and develop personalized lessons to help these students meet their individual needs. And then, like I mentioned before, they had the opportunity to transition back to in-person instruction and practice their social skills. Next slide, please. Any questions for me?
Yes, Janet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So from the information you were giving us, that helped close the gap, you would say?
I would say, yes, I would say if we're looking at our pre and post assessment data, I think it helped close some of the gaps. I do, because of the extension of what was already being taught throughout the year. Then we were able to see when they first took their pre-test, the gains that they made. And when I say gains, that means the students that made progress.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ivory?
I was wondering about the reference point. So when you say increased with iStation, so there was a pre
and a post.
Just in iStation?
Yes, ma'am, just in iStation, iSIP.
Okay, so that's just an iStation
data point.
point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Carla Fahey?
Thank you, Ms. Reyes, for
You're
your
welcome.
report. I appreciate all the numbers because I like numbers, but it's hard for me to assess what the numbers really mean. Like, I mean, for example, algebra had 113 students complete or pass EOC, but to me that doesn't tell me the whole story, like 113 out of 200 or 300 or 400, and then with the percentages, like 46% of pre-K increased the reading score, but I don't know 46 of 100 kids or 200 kiddos.
Right.
I don't think I have a full assessment of what these numbers truly represent.
And I can get you more data and give that to Dr. Smith because I do have more in detail. This was an overview, so I do have one for each campus. And I have spreadsheets and I have everything else, so I can give that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Or Dr. Smith can give it to you.
Okay. Is that fair?
Absolutely it is. So, you know, let me see if we can take a stab at it. Dr. V, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know either you or Dr. Halachka may be able to add some information that could assist the board in understanding the big picture.
Hello, Board. I haven't had a chance to meet all of you yet, but I'm Jim Vashauskas, and I'm serving as the interim chief academic officer. So summer school was actually almost over when I started, and Erica came in and did a fabulous job. Tonight's presentation was just to really try to give you a 30,000-foot view of what was accomplished in summer school. We do have the data. We can go into a great more detail. We can get that to Dr. Smith and have him email that to you, or we can come back to you with another presentation next month if you would prefer that, whatever pleases the board.
I'm not asking for a lot of detail. I don't want you to make numbers possible that aren't already there.
Right.
But just maybe how many pre-K students were enrolled, or maybe second grade students were enrolled, or
so we can get you
just some baseline.
I understand what you're asking for.
Okay,
and
thank
I
you.
think it's a great question. So we can get you enrollment data and a little bit more data with regard to the number of students that we're talking about. And that's a very fair question. So.
And welcome to our district, Dr. V.
Okay.
Glad to have you.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. B.
Any other questions?
Sounds like a individual meeting needs to happen.
I was not asking for Dr. Phil's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. We have one more. Jackie Colton has a question, yes.
Dr. Reyes, I just
sorry.
have a couple of questions. Where it says on core academic 1 through 4th grade program, 67 of students that were required to attend summer school were promoted. What does that mean that the remaining 33 were retained? Or?
They have to go to GPC, which is Grade Placement Committee, which is done at the home campuses, and then the home campuses review the data, and then they make that decision.
Okay, and then also looking at the percent increases in math, not knowing, what the goal was. Can you speak to them?
To which program?
The percent overall increases in math.
For,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, for which program? Pre-KK, first through fourth?
Yeah, for 1 through 4th grade.
Yes, so what they did is what they considered progress is if a student, say, for example, on iStation, I made, say, a 82, but then when I took the post-test, I made an 87. Any student that made progress is what they considered a percentage of that. And it'll make more sense, like Ms. Fahey said, when I get you some more numbers and I can get you the percentage or how many kids, then you can see.
Okay, and so the numbers will include goals?
They did not have like a set goal. They would just had like who made progress. For example, when you look at iStation, it has levels. It has levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so we always want our kids to be at the 80% or above. So that's what we look at because there is a medium level. However, we want to reach a little bit higher. So that level is 4 and 5, so we want to make sure that we look at those kids that are there at that level. And there's also graphs that I can show you or can provide that'll help show that a little bit clearer than just numbers because the graphs with iStation seem to be a little bit more clear. So that's where we like to try to meet and have our students at that 80% or above.
Okay, yeah, so we'll understand better when we get the
and I have
data. Yes, ma'am.
I have this stack right here of details. So, yeah.
Madam President.
Yes, go ahead.
Am I correct in us putting together that we used iStation because we're coming out of the pandemic and we was just trying to find a good baseline so that we'll know how to remediate once the school year starts?
Yes, we can use that data. And iStation is something we use already. So kids are familiar, then they have a login. And so it's, it was something like you said too, we're coming out of virtual. We use that during virtual, we use it during the school year. So it was something familiar. We didn't want to have something new again where they start. So it's a good progress measure. It's not the end all, but it is a good progress measure.
Will we continue to use iStation throughout the rest of the year since we're starting with this data right now?
We are going to use, yes, iStation is a resource that we'll be using, but what we also did was we utilized map growth. I don't know if y'all remember NWEA's map growth that we talked about earlier that we were piloting this spring. So what we did is we assessed all the students that were either recommended or required to go to summer school. We assessed them on map growth at the end of the year, and then we will reassess them at the beginning of the year. And so we will have a growth measure on those students to see if summer school made an impact in closing the gap for those students. So we will also have that additional measure in addition to the pre and post test done through iStation, ISIP.
So MAPS and iStation, do they talk to each other?
They do not talk to each other, but they both feed in to Edugence, which is our data system, and so that we can look at those data points side by side and see a full picture of a student. So that was one of the reasons we transitioned to Edugence this year, is because it is a comprehensive data repository that NWE MAP talks to, as well as the iStation, and so it all comes in there together, and we can get a comprehensive whole picture of a student's academic performance on those assessments as well as others that we utilize.
So MAPS is the new program that we just approved. So are we still doing pilot schools for MAPS, or?
No, this next year we will be going full out.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a better word for that, but everybody will be using MAPS throughout the district. We'll be doing reading, math, language, and science.
So really we
K-12.
want to look at those MAPS
Yes,
numbers.
ma'am. And we've already, like I said, we pre-assessed those students, and then we'll post-assess when they come back. But we can already tell you where their gaps were compared to where they're supposed to be at that grade level and where they actually are starting. So we want to see when they come back and we reassess at the beginning of the year if there was any growth as a result of summer school.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. V, did you have?
I did. I just wanted to make a couple of just observations. It's really hard to look at data like that and really get a full picture. So many of our kids were just bringing back to school, and just getting them to attend was progress.
Really?
Yes.
And so just kind of keep that in mind, that the performance data, when you may see 2%, that may look low to you depending on the number of kids, but if the majority of our kids came to in-person school and stayed and finished the summer school, that in a lot of situations is going to be progress as well, because so many of our kids are going to come to us. They may have been in virtual learning, they may have just not been engaged at all, and so progress performance-wise is going to vary a lot, because maybe just getting them to come to school every day was progress. And so just kind of keep that in mind as we transition into next year.
Very good. Very good.
We just want to sharpen our lens on what we're looking for as the data continues to come.
It's a great question, and
Yes.
it's a very good question, and we'll get you the right data.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Vera-Cruz.
Ms. Reyes, I just wanted to compliment you and thank you for putting in the graph for PACE. I attended that graduation, and it was a joyous occasion. So I wanted to commend all of the graduates and the teachers and the educators and all the instructors that were part of that.
Yes.
And it was a great time to see them finish strong. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for attending.
Thank you again,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Reyes. And board, thank you for your questions and your comments. Very good, very good. We'll now move to the information discussion agenda item C, August professional development. The presenter is Dr. Tamara Liddell.
Again, congratulations on your achievement. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Smith, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith, good evening. I am here today to share with you Duncanville ISD Back to School Professional Development. Next slide. The focus for July professional development is core content, technology, social and emotional learning, and job alike PD. Next slide. So for July's PD, there are two settings. We will have in-person and online synchronous instruction. The purpose of the online synchronous instruction is for social studies, mostly high school, to provide teachers opportunities to participate in virtual tours of the resources that they will be providing to students. And also technology, so our teachers will have the opportunity to walk through a lot of the resources that they will receive during that professional development. And regarding safety protocols, we will be following safety protocols by having smaller class sizes for in-person sessions, multiple sessions offered, and we will adhere to vendors' protocols for COVID-19. Next slide, please. And so the dates for the July back to school, day 1 and day 2 will be district PD days. And the focus for day 1 is what we teach, and the focus for day 2 is going to be how we teach. So for July 29th and 30th, those will be campus days. On the 29th, principals will address professional development based on their campus needs. And on the 30th, teachers will have a work day to prepare for August 2nd, the first day of school. Our presenters will be Duncanville ISD staff and contracted presenters. And convocation will be July 28th. And we have 3 sessions, as I said before, to adhere to safety protocols. Next slide, please. Do you have any questions for me?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Madam President. So are you still looking for presenters? Is that correct? Or is there anyone lined up?
Yes, we have presenters for all sessions at this time.
Good.
Yes, so we have presenters from Region 10, our staff here in Duncanville ISD, and some additional vendors.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
I see that we've covered what we teach and how we teach. Is there a session on who we teach?
That is a great question. As we address social and emotional learning, that will be covered, who we teach and what they bring and how we can serve our students. So yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
You're
and
welcome
again.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the information discussion agenda item D, Elementary Leadership Academy School Choice Initiative. The presenter is Dr. Karen Halachika.
Good evening again. Well, this evening, I'm here to follow up on the progress of the Acton Leadership Academy and some of the other outstanding outcomes of the School Action Fund grant. Over the last few months, we've been planning the addition of this new choice program. Next slide. There we go. Of this new choice program for our elementary students. One of the key actions was to brand the campus as a leadership academy. I'm not sure if you've driven by the campus recently, but you will notice that the marquee has changed as well as the front of the campus displays. This now shows our new Panther mascot designed specifically for our elementary schools.
It's cute.
Cute. As a leadership academy, next slide. As a leadership academy, one of the key uses of the Action Fund monies was to create a stimulating learning environment that represented the campus motto of "We will learn, we will lead, and we will exceed." Throughout the campus, students will be inspired to learn and grow every time they walk the stairs, pass the library, go to lunch, or travel anywhere else in the campus. Leaders are learners, and the changes to the campus send this message throughout. As a leadership academy, the Leader in Me program will be an embedded part of the curriculum, and the students will be taught the 7 leadership habits. The campus has added these driving principles throughout the building as a constant teach piece and a reminder of the leadership qualities they'll be working to instill in their students. In addition to the physical changes to the building, additional resources have been added to create more collaborative and enriched learning opportunities. The interactive monitors that raise up and down as well as turn into a table will allow students to engage digitally, and the added flexible seating that you see here will enable them to move around and work in various learning arrangements. The campus also has received the tools necessary to create makerspaces and use mobile STEM stations in alignment with the work taking place at Kennemer Middle School and the high school, which will be their feeder campuses. And then, of course, teachers have been working throughout the summer, as short as it's been, to gain new understanding of the Leader in Me curriculum and planning to ensure leadership qualities and service opportunities are embedded in every child, every day, in every grade level. And then in addition to the work that was completed to create the Acton Leadership Academy, we were also able to use some of the School Action Fund grant monies to create some engaging learning spaces at Alexander and Hastings. You can see that we were able to update the library at Alexander with this flexible furniture that allows students to work and learn together. And then at Hastings, they transformed many of the collaborative learning spaces as well to create an environment that encouraged collaboration and character. As you can see, the choice opportunities for our students in Duncanville continue to grow, which makes our district unique and special. And thanks to the School Action Grant work, we were able to create exciting learning spaces and opportunities for even more students throughout the district. I want to say thank you for your support of this work, and of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, comments?
I have a
comment. Okay, go ahead, Jackie Colton.
Once again, y'all have done an excellent job with this. I mean, I am just amazed. It's bright, it's colorful, it's all, synchronized and tied together. I think it's going to be a big draw for our district. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you and your staff and Dr. Smith. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish I had a child.
I know.
Me too. But all of our children, those that are selected get to attend. So, yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Dr. Lochka. Well, you're up again. We'll be moving to the information discussion agenda item E, first reading of the Texas Association School Board Local Policy Update 116 and 117, FO Local. The presenter again is Dr. Lochka.
Thank you so much. Not as exciting as Leadership Academy, but I am pleased to share with you the first reading of the recommended policy revisions in 2 of our TASB updates and 1 additional policy revision recommendation. Duncanville ISD works with the Texas Association of School Boards to prepare its policies. TASB provides routine updates to both legal and local policies. However, only local policies are adopted by the board since legal policies are a reflection of law and local policies govern how the district adheres to the law. These periodic policy revisions by TASB are called updates and are done based on new legislation, legal clarification, or often just simply to improve the readability and clarity of language in our policy. Policy revisions can also be recommended by district administration to ensure alignment with our current practice. Tonight, I will be providing you the first reading of several policies that are being recommended for revision from TASB, along with one policy revision recommendation made by administration. All policies have been reviewed by senior leadership, and you have been provided in your board packet a copy of the annotated policies this evening. So let's get started. CQB Local is being revised to provide the board flexibility in delegating to the superintendent the responsibility of selecting a cybersecurity training program and to verify and report training completion by employees. The recommended revision to DCD Local is to clarify that an at-will employee's appeal of dismissal does not start with the board, but instead must follow the employee grievance process. DCE Local has the same revision as DCD Local, but it relates to employees with non-Chapter 21 contracts. Next is FFAC Local, and there were several revisions made to this policy to eliminate language that was non-governance and more operational in nature. As well, they clarified the guidelines regarding the administering of non-prescription medication. And then the last policy in Update 116 is GKA Local, which simply adds the word calendar to clarify the appeal timeline associated with campus ejections or exclusions. Then in Update 117, we have 3 policy revisions. CH Local is first and adds language that will allow the board to delegate authority to the superintendent during times of catastrophe, emergency, or natural disaster to contract for the replacement, construction, and repair of equipment and facilities. And of course, this has been added to give the board flexibility in times such as the winter storm that we had in February. CV Local simply adds a reference to the revisions that were made in CH Local. And then DEC Local has been changed significantly as it relates to employee leave to add language that allows flexibility for districts due to the impact of the pandemic. This policy is also streamlined to remove the operational language that, of course, is better defined in our employee handbook and regulations. And then the final policy revision is the one that's being recommended by administration. In reviewing the TASB Model Student Handbook with a group of district and campus administrators, we determined that our FO local policy, needed to be revised to reflect that corporal punishment is no longer a district practice and has not been for quite a while due to the legal liability that this places upon personnel. We reached out to TASB, and they have provided us with the recommended revisions to remove that corporal punishment language. Our next step will be to listen to any recommendations or revisions from the board and adjust the policies as requested prior to recommendation for approval in August. Once approved, administration will then provide TASB for review and posting, and then create the necessary regulations to operationalize the board's governance policies. Therefore, this concludes my presentation of policy updates, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I do not. Do you have one? Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
On those policies related to compensation and benefits, what input is sought from employees?
So I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Brown so she can talk a little bit more directly about how she does that.
Good evening. So when you speak of compensation and benefit, are you talking about as far as what the individuals are paid, or are you talking about the piece as it relates to their compensation and benefits, their leave?
No, just the policies like DEC, local.
Yes. So that relates to their leave. And so that has to do with like state days. They give guidance on what we should do as far as when an employee has those days accessible to them. So the policy currently states, for example, that that happens at the beginning of a school year. They've changed the language in the policy as a recommendation to you. For example, saying that that would then be prorated based on the amount of time that they work. And so that's not a lot of input from employees. On last year, I would say that we made some changes based on bringing some recommendations to the board related to DEC, and now some of those things are being brought again for a change. For example, the way our employees have access to use their state and their local leave changed during this past school year, so that they can use both of those types of leave for any reason. You used to be able to only use your state personal leave for certain things and then use your local leave for only sick. Now those two types of leave are interchangeable, and that did happen because of feedback from employees not just in Duncanville, but across the state. Does that help to clarify a little?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, yes, Carla Fahey?
Thank you. On page 131, I just wondered why the $50,000 is crossed through and then $50,000 is added. What's behind that?
So there are times when TASB will make corrections, and it could have been as simple as a spacing error, that they'll go through and they still annotate that. So there was actually no change. It just, for whatever reason, they wanted to note that they moved something, either a space, or it could be one word was put in front of it. It can be a lot of different things. But you'll see that often in policy, or you'll see that it moves from one, it'll move to the next sentence. And so that's when I said sometimes we'll make these revisions just for readability, just to fix an edit, and they come in as policy revisions. So there's no real revision there.
Okay, thank you. Still don't get it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No more questions, comments? Okay, we'll now move to communications from citizens. We have no communications from citizens. Being that there are no further items to discuss, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.